All right, it's time for another schedule preview. I'm just going down the list on Patreon. We'll get these done. We'll get them all done by the time April is over. Uh, Almost April now, by the way. But so we'll do these. We'll finish these up over the course of the next month. But Michigan State is up today, and I'm not going to lie, this one is not going to take very long. I did a Big Ten head coach hot seat video the other day, and I talked about Michigan State, obviously, in that video because Mel Tucker, two disappointing seasons so far out of the three at Michigan State, particularly last year, 5-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten, and most of their losses were blowouts. It was not a situation where they were losing close games. They don't appear to be very close to being a good or relevant team. In the Big Ten. And this is yet another example of why I think it's important that I do these schedule previews. I wasn't very high on Michigan State to begin with heading into next year before I even start to look at roster or overall talent or things like that. But you take a look at this schedule. The second half of this schedule is just absolutely brutal. Let's just put it up on the screen and go through it. Okay, we'll start at the top of the schedule and work the way down, but you can't even glance at this schedule without just noticing right away the second half of this schedule. You know, everybody knows the three best programs right now in the Big Ten are Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. You play them all the second half of the season. That's in addition to a road game at Minnesota, home game in Nebraska. It's just absolutely brutal after that bye week on October 7th. But we'll start at the top here. Spring game. Coming up in a couple of weeks on April 15th. Regular season starts this year, Saturday, September 2nd. Michigan State hosts Central Michigan, and boy, you better win that game. Same thing the following week at home against the Richmond Spiders. You need to be 2-0. Any chance of bowl eligibility hinges on winning both of those first two games. Week 3 at home is a probable loss, in my opinion, against a pretty good Washington team from the Pac-12. You get them at home, I guess that's an advantage, but it's likely the only advantage. Then you play Maryland at home, a team that I would probably put in a similar category as Michigan State. At best, I think that's probably a toss-up game type situation. You get them at home, so maybe I give you a little bit of an advantage in that one. Then on the road at Iowa. Iowa's a team I am not very high on this year. Obviously, the good defense and the no offense has been the problem at Iowa. Weird offseason there. The coaches, Kirk Ferentz, their head coach, the son is the offensive coordinator. He's kind of been painted into a corner, basically told he has to average a certain number of points per game this year, or else that number is only 24. It's not that hard to average 24 points a game in college football, unless you're Iowa. But nevertheless, you got to play them there. Tough spot. The first half of that schedule, if you somehow make it out of that with just one loss, I think that would be a huge W for Michigan State. But, I mean, the Washington game, I think you'll be a significant underdog. Maryland, okay, maybe that's a 50-50 game. I think you'll be a slight underdog on the road at Iowa. If they somehow get out of that stretch of games there with one loss, that would be a miracle. Coming out of the bye week, you play on the road at Rutgers, another absolute must-win game. It's on the road, it's at Rutgers. Greg Schiano, another coach that's been disappointing the last few years. Again, I think Michigan State's probably a better team than Rutgers. You do have to play them there, but boy, you better find a way to win that one. Because you got Michigan the next week. I know that's an in-state rival game. I know you beat them a couple of years ago. You beat them a few times recently, in fact. It's hard to imagine Michigan State winning this game. I know it's at home. I really don't think that matters. It's just Michigan right now, not only are they just a way better team overall than Michigan State, they just appear to be a much more stable program. It's hard for me to imagine Michigan State beating Michigan this coming season. On the road at Minnesota. Again, I think Michigan State is probably a little bit better than Minnesota. But every few years, Minnesota tends to have one of those pop years. Is this the year? I don't know. You have to play them there. It's an opponent from the West that you don't always play. I guess I'll lean Michigan State in that one. Home against Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to be much improved this year under Matt Rule. Unlike Scott Frost, I think Matt Rule does know what he's doing. Now there's an obvious talent gap at Nebraska as compared to the top teams in the Big Ten, but not necessarily as compared to Michigan State. I think this is a game that either team could win. Again, a benefit for you getting them at home. But then back-to-back road games at Ohio State and at Indiana. Again, the Ohio State thing, it's just no way for me to imagine Michigan State winning that game right now. Indiana, much more likely W there than at Ohio State, but even that one I think is going to be a little tricky. I'll lean Michigan State. And then home against Penn State, and of course I'm very high on Penn State this year. I think they're might be the best team in the Big Ten this year. They return a lot. Two really good running backs, Drew Allar, quarterback this year. Very tough schedule here for Michigan State. This does not look like a schedule that Michigan State can get bowl eligible against, in my opinion. If I just look at the games without even naming them, just looking at them, that I am 90% or more sure that Michigan State will lose, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 5 games on here that I just can't imagine Michigan State winning. If they lose those 5 games, all they got to do is lose 2 more in addition to that, and you're looking at another 5-7 season missing bowl eligibility, and Mel Tucker's going to have to start answering some really tough questions because you're not paying the guy a peanut. You're paying him $9.5 million a year. The ceiling looks like to me here 7-5, and even if you go 7-5, $9.5 million, you're not paying $9.5 million for 7-5 either. It's about to get uncomfortable, I think, for Mel Tucker at Michigan State. Anyway, there you go. Michigan State schedule preview. Have a good morning.